It's time for Transport Line, the program that showcases the contributions of almost of transportation to the socio-economic growth and development of our country, Africa, and the rest of the world. Transport Line is being beamed to you from the Center of Excellence, the state of aquatic splendor, and Africa's second largest economy, Lagos. I am Shino Elegbede, and thanks for being part of the program. The recent face-off between the freight forwarders and shipping line has brought to the fore the issue of the Nigerian Shippers Council as the economic regulator at the Nigerian ports. Well, that's not our main focus tonight, but I tell you we shall come back and treat this issue later. Today we're going to look at the issue of safety and railways. We recall that in 1898, the British colonial master brought the railways to Nigeria, and that mode of transportation served the colonial masters throughout the period when they were here, till 1960 to be precise. It was used to carry farm produce and of course many raw materials to the seaports en route to the outside world and Europe. But today, the railway has become one of the fastest and most safe mode of transportation in moving commuters and cargo. In Nigeria, like I said, between 1898 and 1960, this mode of transportation really performed wonderfully well for the British colonial master. Between 1960 and early 70, yes, railway was responsible for moving at least 60% or 62% of commuters and cargoes, and it was really very effective when we talk about that mode of transportation. It did contribute immensely to the socio-economic development of this country. But well, come the road oiled masters who took cognizance of their ethnic and religious belief without putting Nigeria as a prime factor. So indirectly, the journey to negatively affect the impact of the railway in our socio-economic development started. And that led to this introduction of the Railway India Technical and Services, Economic Services Rights in 1979. So between 1979 and 1982, the rise of India was there, and they did try to revitalize the Nigerian railways. Well, the dilly-dally was there until the Fourth Republic. So between 1999 and to date, the PDP and APC governments have tried their own little ways to revitalize the Nigerian railways, especially with the introduction of the standard gauge. With the insecurity all over the place, not only in Nigeria, but we are talking about our country now, the railway is a prime mode of transportation in terms of safety. Is it Lagos, Ibadan, or Abuja, Kaduna? And of course, Warri, Itakpe. Those are the standard gauge tracks we're talking about now. Of course, the narrow gauge is still there. So what we're now looking at on this particular episode is safety and the railways in Nigeria. And I have with me on set my usual railway consultant, Paul Ndibe, who is going to talk to us about safety and Nigerian railways and the Nigerian environment. So safety and the Nigerian railways as well as the Nigerian environment is going to be handled by Paul Ndibe. And Paul, you're welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you.
Paul, Transport Line is not comfortable with the frequent, yes, and I meant it, frequent disruption of rail services, especially on the standard gauge. You see that there's derailment or vandalization of tracks, and that really affects safety. So what do you think?
Well, thank you Well, it's correct that recent occurrences have actually drawn attention to the issue of security and, of course, safety on the railway mode. And outside cases of vandalizations that have also caused disruptions on the track, there have been some derailments and accidents on the track that are not related to vandalization. So those ones are also giving concern. And currently on the Nigerian Railway network, it is the standard gauge that's extensively in use, even with their short connections. The narrow gauge, with the exception of maybe a few lines in Plateau State, Aba to Port Harcourt, and then the Lagos to, well, let me say, Osogbo, not necessarily to Ilori because of the washouts.
You've not repaired that one?
No, it's still under, they are almost through, but not yet declared open. So, but there is a through line of narrow gauge from, well, Ebute Meta Junction or Apapa to Osogbo. That is the major stations there. So these are just the situation for now.
Recently, there was a derailment, standard gauge line, and thank God there was no fatality. But then, from what we've learned, yes, investigation are on and what have you, but the frequency of it is giving one concern. What should be done?
Well, accidents on the railway track, railway is designed in such a way that it should be safe, safer than current six on the road. But of course, accidents occur. But for each of these classes of accidents, why I say classic, because it's not a unique type of accident. They have various forms of accidents on the railway track. There are safeguards and also set procedures for addressing or mitigating cases of accidents. Recently, there was this accident at also the Abuja-Kaduna line, passenger train, of course. And the one before it was also on the same Abuja-Kaduna. In space of how many months? And also on a passenger train. So it's quite troubling. And if you look at accidents on the track, and they can be denominated in terms of equipment and in terms of location. What I mean by equipment is, if it is the loco that is running and fails, is an accident. It can be expected, and there are safeguards for that. If beyond that, there are other classes of accidents like mid-section accidents, like the two that happen in Abuja, they're all mid-section accidents, but of different classifications. One was derailment and capsizing. The other one was vehicle running into another, which supposed to have been part of that stock, and then they were, bumping and all that. And beyond mid-section accident, there's also signal accidents, where you have point failures, you have crossing problems, and of course, level crossing accidents. So there are different classifications. And more importantly is when a train is going and suddenly breaks down and then passengers are stranded. There are expected cases of accident, but the one you are referring to relate to the two that recently happened in Abuja.
Yeah.
And they are mid-section accidents. So if that is the focus, then we can discuss that further.
Yes, that's the main focus, because when we have frequent accidents on the standard gauge, it gives one cause of concern. And for railway experts like you, I don't know what you think about it.
Well, there are accidents, and because there are accidents, they happened on the rail, so it's expected that they are rail-based accidents. But the critical thing is the procedures that should not allow for these accidents to occur, or in the frequency that they are occurring. Like I said, the last two accidents happened, or rather are mid-section accidents, because they are in between two stations, so they are mid-section accidents. But they are not of the same kind. One was derailment, capsizing on account of a different issue. The second one was also an accident, a vehicle running into, that's supposed to have been a component of that train, that detached and ran into that. The details of the accident will soon be polished by those who have investigated, but from the point of view of somebody who is familiar with situations like that, I think I can express some opinion on that. You see, there is the train set. What I mean by a train set is the engine, the coaches, and of course, the second engine. This applies to a DMU set, dual multiple unit set of a train, mostly in passenger trains. And the essence is to obviate the need or necessity for shunting, or when the train is returning, you don't need to take the local round and all that. So it is designed to run that way. The troubling fact now is what happened that this particular last engine got detached from the rake. There could have been some detachment of the local or some attention that was given, and when it was coupled back, part of the thing they would have done to fully secure it to the rake may not have been done. In that case, while the train was moving, and the undulating effect on the track would have caused either the coupling or whatever to detach, and then, of course, there should be somebody manning that particular component of the train. So if the person wasn't where he would have been to or make that observation, or where the connections would have been made to the leading local, we are not connected. Things like that could happen. And what should happen in that circumstance? If a vehicle detaches, more so the last vehicle of a train, is a free run it will, of course, have. If it's on a descent, it might be running more than the expected speed because nothing is pulling it. If it's on a decline, it's possible that it might also roll back. So it's a very serious affair. But in this case, it appears that it detached and had to hit the vehicle that was supposed to be attached to it. And that was the impact. So it's a different class of accident, and the investigation will reveal what would have been responsible for that. But from the hindsight of a professional, these are clear signs of what must have been responsible for the accident.
You see, Paul, from the frequency of these accidents, derailment, vandalization of tracks, brings to mind the 20s when aircrafts were dropping Nigeria like kites, and Dr. Dumure, as we brought in, I'm referring to the aviation sector now, to sanitize the aviation sector, and that really stabilized things. Do we need to bring in Nigerian experts, or because the way things are now, they have Safety and Safety Bureau, I don't think they have experts that can thoroughly investigate real derailment, because that particular body was set up to look at the aviation sector. But today, it's being called to investigate, and I believe the knowledge you don't have, you can't use.
Well, of course, I don't think I'm best suited to, because I don't know the members of the
composition of the
yes, and then the composition.
Yes.
However, you may look at what is the kilometer, of our railway system that is serviceable. It's not that challenging as to, lead to situations like this. And you look at the staff strength and also the equipment in use for running these services. So one might look at the necessity for training and the retraining of the staff, and having the standard rules for the operators. Secondly, as far as my knowledge and belief could carry me, on the Nigerian Railway Corporation, there is still what they call an annual certificate, that is certificate of competence. They call it TC9, that is usually issued, particularly to operation staff. And then there's a monthly, and then of course in some areas, quarterly review of the rules, working instructions supporting the operation of rail services. If, for example, a particular vehicle was detached from a rake and coupled back, the standard expectation is that on the narrow gauge, the driver, before he takes the train, comes down, take the numbers of the vehicles on his train, coaches or wagons, and then personally examine their connections.
Nations.
And then a staff of the carriage and wagon department whose responsibility it is to certify this train okay to leave will equally sign record of the observation and affirmation of what they have seen with the driver and then the guard before the train leaves. If that was done on this particular train, I don't think there would have been that accident. So that calls to mind the necessity for training and retraining of the staff, and in particular, the case reinstituting the issue of refresher courses for the staff, because you know something you do repeatedly, it is assumed that it is normal, but then at times you can repost staff, and that reposting of staff will bring in new ideas and new interests in the job, and that will help to maybe have a more deeper inspection of this vehicle and their certification before they depart. That could, in some measure, ameliorate the incidents or cases of these accidents.
The way things are, I am not an insider, but from the look of things, basic things like level crossing, gates, issue of signaling. I'm very particular about signaling because from the look of things, we are still operating the manual, which was in the practice during this narrow gauge. What is happening? When the Chinese came, don't they do automatic standard gauge signaling?
Well, to some great extent, and in some major depots, there have been some signal posts, and then it's points. What I mean by signal posts are light signals, electronically generated, signal lights that instead of the manual ones, but then the signal lamps. Yes, they are there, but the situation in Nigeria, they have to be powered by electricity, and I don't know the extent or the degree of electric supply to most of these stations. Yes, they are run on generators, and you look at the cost of 1 liter of diesel that will power the generators and all that. So that calls on the need by, if you are taking a particular technology from a particular country and infusing it into your situation. In China, they may have abundance of electricity and it might be cheap. In Nigeria, we don't have that luxury. So in the design of the equipment, they can only give you what they have or what you ask for. So if it requires high density use of electricity and you don't have it, then it becomes a problem. Apparently, that could answer for why most of the stations are not currently
using manual.
It's not necessarily manual, but a semi-automatic system that they can use mobile phones for train communication. That is train communication. But in actual signaling to direct on what point you are going, and for the driver to be sure and certain that he's entering either the main line or the loop line, there should be points, signal lights on those things. But they are usually not seen. If they are there, they have not been energized. Because if they have been energized, you will see it. You will see them. So that could be a factor. So it's not that I wouldn't say that they are not part of the design. I'm only stating the fact that they are not, visibly, observed at stations. So I think it's something they can look into and know why it is that way and see how they can resolve it. If it is the energy consuming type, there might be the other ones to support those signal lights, particularly when there is a train approach. Just like they light up the stations for passengers to use, they can also light up the signal points for trains to actually know on which direction is given. But this is as it refers to station, not as it refers to sections where this accident had taken place. Because you don't need those signal lights at sections.
The way things are, it looks as if the issue of public power supply, electricity-wise, is something that government should address urgently, whether for social services or for the average Nigerian. Yeah, you're talking about gas payment for debt being owed by gas companies. But isn't there other mode of energy supply that the Nigerian railway can use aside electricity to power all these things?
Well, there are various sources of energy for
Energy.
that. Some are using solar, inverter, and all kinds. But at the point, look at the standard gauge when the contract was issued many years ago. At that point, the issue of solar panel system may not have been invoked as we currently see today. But it's possible that they can also, transform to that. But it depends on, the level of investment that they want to put out for that purpose, as opposed to buying diesel in order to power the generators. Generators are there, but are they being powered and at what cost? Just like we have on Abuja line, where along the signal lies on Abuja Kaduna line is powered on generators.
Yeah.
They increase the cost of operation. So it is a thing that railway should look more inwards and find an alternative sources of power generation.
Well, Paul, I want to thank you very much. They say our time is up, but I think until we try to systematically and constructively engage ourselves, devoid of ethnic, religious, and political affiliation, to address issues not only affecting the Nigerian railways but Nigerian socio-economic welfare in general, we won't get there, and we need to get there. I thank you for finding time to come on Transport Line. We are not raising alarm. It's because we care. Because of the insecurity in the country, railway is one mode that at least majority of Nigerians can afford to patronize, unlike the aviation sector. We hope that something urgent will be done about all this issue of safety and security on the Nigerian system. Thank you very much for finding time to come.
It's my pleasure.
Well, the crisis in the Middle East is still on, and you can see, I don't know how much you buy a liter of petrol in your area now, but it has something to do with the federal government. It's a global issue. So when you want to go out, whether through public transportation or your own personal vehicle, make sure your journey is productive. That way you save a lot of money. And most importantly, again, like I used to say, times are still hard. Yes, price of food might come down, but do you have the purchasing power? So this is where compassion comes in. To your families, to your friends, and to your neighbors, compassion is still the key word. Be compassionate. Next time, bye bye for now.